Okay, here's the feedback I have so far on the Shabby Blogs website that you're building. So far it's looking good. We're happy with the progress. There's just a few things we're noticing, and they may be things that you're still working on. If not, I just want to point them out. So the first thing is that you'll notice on the design on the splash page here that there's a missing graphic. Okay, now obviously each one of these semicircles needs to be its own independent link, and it looks like that's set up, but there's a graphic over here that's missing. And if we go to box.net, you'll see that it's this graphic here that needs to be floating over the top of the other elements. So I just noticed that that's missing. Just want to make sure that gets included. The next thing is that you'll notice, I'm looking in the PSD file right now, that the text up here needs to be centered nicely. Okay, you can see how it's nicely centered in each one of these. Now if we jump over to the temporary website, the development one, home link is not really centered. It's too high and too far to the left. Design, same thing, that needs to be centered. Tutorials looks pretty good. You might be able to bump it up a pixel or two. FAQ is a little too far to the left and a little too low. So just make sure that the text is nicely centered on every one of these. The other thing is make sure that these elements are clickable also. I'm not exactly sure how you're currently defining each one of these, but we want to make sure that people can click on the maximum area. Not everyone's going to put their mouse over just the text itself. Someone might put their mouse over this section right here and still expect to click on it and have it go to the home page. So each one of these links needs to be a link and not just the text. Okay. The next one, if we go to the About page, actually let's go to the FAQ page. You'll see on the FAQ page, let's see if I can duplicate this. Okay, it's kind of hard to show you with the size I'm currently looking at. Let's see. Okay, I'll just shrink down the browser size a little bit. So at the very bottom of the website, where we have the footer background area, so these polka dots and the lace, that section does not anchor to the bottom of the web browser. So if I were on a page like this, where there's not a lot of content initially, let's say my browser window is open twice as tall as it currently is, the bottom of this footer polka dot area is not actually touching the very bottom of the browser window. It just kind of floats up there after a certain point. We want to make sure that this whole footer section is anchored to the very bottom of the web browser, regardless of how big the web browser is opened. Okay, so just make sure that's all anchored down to the bottom. Another thing is you can see right here that we have this FAQ. Let me zoom back in again. We have this FAQ text, and you'll see if you were to make a line, just an imaginary line all the way across, it would run into this graphic right here. We just want to make sure there's enough padding between this upper header area and the main content area. That way we don't have elements in the main content area that are overlapping elements either in the header or the footer. So you can see clearly right here that in the footer also, if we were to expand this text, which this one doesn't look like it's doing it right now, but you can see that these elements in the main content area are overlapping with elements in the footer section. Okay, and we don't want that. We want to make sure there's some padding above the footer area so we don't get overlapping elements down here. So again, same thing in the header, same thing in the footer. You'll also notice that down here where we have the navigation links in the footer, in the Photoshop file, if you look here, you'll see that these links are farther to the left, and they're also a lot closer to the social media links. There's very little space between these. Then if we jump over here, you can see there's quite a bit of space, and the edge, the very last link here, should be tucked up in this area. So you can see this paper kind of comes down, which creates sort of a content pocket right here. That's where that navigation needs to sit. The other thing that I'm noticing, I'm not exactly sure why this happened, is if you look at the top of the browser, so the very edge, the very left side of this design would be here, and if you continued that line down, it would probably end somewhere around here. And then same thing on the right side. If you continued down to the very bottom, it would be somewhere around here. There's a lot of extra space here and also here between the edge of the content, the main frame, and the information you see in the footer. So again, if we jump back to the PSD file, you'll see that the graphics that we have actually extend almost to the edge out here. So this girl that you see currently is way inside right here. If we go back to the splash page, you'll see that the girl lines up with about the middle of the advertisement section, but in the PSD, she should be almost to the edge of the advertisement section. So for some reason, there are elements that are being bunched up, and they need to be a little more spread out. It looks like the problem might be somewhere in this area. You can see how the Twitter logo is overlapping on top of the ruler graphic, but in the PSD file, you can see that there's space right here. I think that might be where the problem is. So we need to make sure that these social media links are probably pushed over to the left a little bit, creating some space. And then also all of these graphics should be pushed more to the right, so the girl is more towards the far edge, not all the way, but closer to the edge, the right edge of the page. So again, the edge would be where the rose is. If you continue down, that's out here. So she's obviously not all the way out there, but she's farther over to the right than she currently is on the development site. And then also these links need to be a little farther over to the left at the bottom. So that's all the feedback I've got right now. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know.